level. Next level.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Aspen City Council work session for October 14th, 2024. And on our agenda today is more budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will go ahead and go to the recap slide. On 9:30, we had our kickoff and had a few departments present. We do have some follow-up tonight and then at next week's meeting on October 21st for some of those items, and just wanted to see if there are any additional questions that we need to prepare for.
Did anybody have any items that they wanted to bring back up? There were still some outstanding questions, I think, from 9:30. But did anybody have anything that came to them after the fact on these topics?
Not after the fact, no.
Word, all good? All right.
All right, thank you. A few of the key points that we're going to return, questions about EV chargers, the ones that were down and their status, the term sustainability analyst and building IQ will all be incorporated into the EHS Climate Action and REMP Fund presentations next week. And then one of the other questions was for Ben and Community Development on direct and indirect costs with departments. So we do have a slide to share for that follow-up.
Any more of that? Yeah, Bill?
Yeah,
Sorry.
thanks, Matt. This may not be like part of the budget process necessarily, but there was the conversation about exploring options for Aspen Country Inn and Truscott, financing and sale options for that. So again, I understand if that's not part of the budget process, but I want to make sure that doesn't get forgotten.
We do still have that on the radar.
Thanks.
So this slide, ComDev and Ben was included in the council packet. Ben is with us tonight if you have any specific questions, but this kind of points to what's included in direct and indirect costs for the building and planning departments within community development.
Thanks.
If this was missing anything, I wouldn't know it. There's been, yeah, I wouldn't know it, you know. I don't know if you want to fill in any information here. I guess it's self-explanatory, if understandable.
I think as I understood the question, is related to coming into community development on an annual basis. And I say that the discussion around the topics are part of the updates to ComDev's fees that we've been talking with. We had a work session with council earlier this year. But I will say that just parsing the difference between direct and indirect costs and landing those kinds of things into a fee schedule has been part of the complexity with unpacking ComDev fees. But certainly thinking about in the work session conversation we had with council, we talked about this to some degree, asking about things that we are currently not charging for, things that we might think about charging for in the future. But ultimately, the way that we think about costs downstairs, our direct costs are everything that's involved with providing services that ultimately result in either land use set of entitlements or a building permit. Some of those things are informal conversations that happen way before a permit's submitted or a land use application submitted. But we do think that those things are direct costs. Staff meetings where we're talking about outcomes within both permits and land use cases we see as part of those direct costs. But if council wants to talk about this in more direct ways, we can certainly do so into kind of a proposal for ComDev's fees sometime 25.
Okay, any other questions here, guys? Anything? No? It'll come back to us. All right. Thanks for that, Ben. I appreciate it.
All right. Tonight we have the 150 Housing Development Fund, Police, Streets Department, Parks and Open Space, and then I will be presenting golf, recreation, and special events. So with that, Rob.
Good evening, Rob Schober, Asset Director. I'll be presenting the budget for the 150 or Housing Development Fund. So 50 revenues, there's an opening balance $95 million. The bulk of the revenues coming in are from the RET tax, with another significant portion of that coming from the STR tax. Summarize total revenues in $27 million from 2025. One other item to note here is in our out years, the 2027 is a $70 million debt issuance, which we'll touch base on here a little later in the presentation about what the basis of our 5-year outlook is for the lumberyard expenditures. So expenditures for 2025, there is a $2.5 million operating budget. The bulk of the expenditures is the lumberyard and a $20 million capital ask. That still leaves the ending fund balance right at $98 million, with a change in the fund balance of $3.5 million for 2025. Again, you can look at the spending ramping up over the next 4 years for the 5-year for the lumberyard.
There are 2 supplementals from the 150 fund, and both tied to housing within the city. The first, on the operating side, relates to all of APSHA's supplemental requests that were touched on the kickoff night, continuing the Essential Home Repairs pilot program, website redesign, their new FTE, and then the remaining piece of the city's share to ensure that the APSHA 620 fund meets their targeted fund reserves. This represents our 50%, and then there's equal ask for Pitkin County for 2025 from APSHA. The second piece is the 150 fund and the city contributing towards the asphalt resurfacing projects, specifically for ACI and Truscott too, because of their tax credit status. They do not have the revenue, cash flow, or reserves to be able to fully fund these projects on their own. Any questions on the supplementals?
I guess on these 2, Rob, we're beyond just sealing. The asphalt's totally degraded.
Yeah, they're gonna completely, yeah. And this is, I guess, combined with.
This is the project that council saw as part of the larger engineering asset management plan that's combining roadways, parking lots, and trails all into one bid.
All right, lumberyard. We'll be talking primarily about Phase 0, which is the infrastructure portion of the work, which we're anticipating to kick off here with the demo and abatement at the end of this year, 2024, and then the expenditures for 2025 and 2026. Our 2025 request is $20 million, obviously a significant increase from the previous estimate. 2024, that number, that 4.2 plus a little over $1 million is what we have carried forward. We've continued to see escalation of construction costs, and then we've also have, since the SD estimate was completed in 2022, added a significant amount of scope to the project. We did our best here to try to highlight where those costs were going, kind of the hard cost increase that we're seeing, whether it was added scope, whether it was inflation, or whether it was a bit of both. Are there any questions?
Can you please explain, Rob, to make it perfectly clear to everybody that this is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but can you please confirm that this is for Phase 0 only, and what was anticipated at $14.25 million is now anticipated at what?
45.
$45 million, correct?
Correct. Confirmed.
3X.
Correct.
Thank you.
How much of that is an added scope, or do we add scope to it? How much of that is added scope? I see it's like 53% is added scope.
Yeah, so we added scope by land use. CDOT has added scope. For instance, there's been sound walls were added scope. There's additional lengthened DXR lanes on 82 is added scope. The underpass at the trail, for the trail at the intersection is added scope. Sound walls are added scope. There's a fair amount that has been added to the scope of the project since 2021, 2022, when that previous SD estimate was completed.
What's next steps for this? The initial budgeted estimate, and then
So good.
cost increases, where do we go from here? What are we gonna try to do in order to mitigate for as much of this as possible?
So this 45 million is our budgeted amount. This work will be competitively let. This is a kind of an outline of how we envision the Phase Zero construction going. It's going to be basically a 2-year project running through the end of 2026. We spelled out kind of the order of operations of how we see this work will be executed and the estimated expenditures. We are working with a contractor at this time to finalize a contract for the demo and abatement portion, and it looks like it's going to be, within reasonable number compared to the budget here for the demo and abatement scope. And we should be in front of council with that contract here in the next few weeks.
On that question specifically, if I can.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you. Do we know, Rob, what that $7 million would be if we were not trying to do this high recycling threshold on the building?
I don't know specifically. It's really the piece that if we can, especially the asphalt, concrete, if we can keep that on site and reuse that, it's actually really, it's a good thing versus haul it off and pay for it to be dumped. So, I don't have that number here. It's something we could for sure come back to council and let you know. But the bulk of the recycling is asphalt and concrete, and that's a good thing that if we can do that and keep that on site.
When you say good thing, you mean financially?
Financially, correct, yes.
All right, because a $7 million demo of that number seems extraordinary to me. I'm not fully up to speed on what level of abatement's required.
Again, so this work has been competitively bid. We've had good response, so when you see the contract, you'll have a good idea of where we landed, in the open marketplace for that scope. And that scope is pretty well defined.
All these numbers are large. It's not just that these costs are landing on one aspect. I'm wondering if there's any, value decision-making that could be revisited in some of the asks that council has built into this and how they work out with some of it. So I don't know if there's a way for us to get a little insight into some of the choices that have been made and how they impact these expenditures, but I'd be interested in that.
So, council, I think on the land development piece, there's probably not a ton of opportunity for value engineering. However, in the vertical construction realm, I think there's some intentional choices that council made that when we come back with the developer RFP, we will likely have some opportunities for value engineering or changes to the project there.
And let us not forget that this scope could be added to the scope performed by the.
Right.
This does not need to be performed by the city of Aspen.
Can we expect any CDOT?
No, not that I know of.
In federal grants?
Yeah, there is a $2 million plug that was in the revenues line for a federal grant.
All right, let's move on through this, but stick a pin in this and we'll come back to it. Thanks.
I like the other term.
I know you do.
Steak.
So as I alluded to earlier, this is kind of a balanced plan that we've come up with for our long-range fund for expenditures for the lumberyard. This is not set in stone by any means. There's going to be discussions both with council and with the developer for the vertical piece of this construction, and we'll have several different options to look at. But right now, the way it is sitting in the 5-year is a big expenditure in 2026, 80 million, which 100% of that is cash balance. 2027, an expenditure of 85 million, of which the bulk of that is that $70 million debt issuance from bond proceeds that you saw in the long range, and then in out years 2028 through 2030, $15 million each per 3 years.
I wonder, Rob, 2026 and 27, are those phases 1 and 2, or those phase 1?
So 2026 is the infrastructure work will be wrapping up. I would expect, if all goes well, that we will have a developer on board, but we should be able to phase that and get someone in there on site to be starting the vertical piece of that construction. So the ending piece of this will be turning over the site to a developer. We have penciled right now that we would do curb and gutter, minimal landscaping, depending to try to stabilize the site, like temporarily stabilizing the site, and then 1 layer of asphalt. But that's still up in the air. There's a lot of details we work out with our development partner and how you receive the site and, what their plan is for us and vertical construction. So a lot of balls in the air there, TBD, in terms of how that goes.
My question was, this is just phase 1. What I'm trying to get at is, can we combine phase 1 and, because we have $95 million over those 2 years that we've been paying out of cash. Is it possible to combine those phases and decrease costs?
So the answer, I guess, if I understand your question, is yes, there are options for how we phase the remainder of this work. Nothing is set in stone yet. So there will be options on how we phase the work, how we let the work, what our development partner comes. The development partners have come with, different models on how we might pay for it, how the work's to be executed. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. And we here in front of council with some options and recommendations on how you might, like to see that work proceed. And that will also influence how we spend this money, for sure.
Councilmember Homestead, if I can add, the money that's shown up here is really the distribution towards the project, but it's not the full cost of the project. So this is basically time based on the available resources from the city's end to be able to help move the project forward. It's not necessarily indicative of the time frame.
And during phase 0, we had that you were going to create the RFQ for vertical construction. And how's that progressing, and when are we gonna get an idea what the final costs are gonna be? We can decrease those costs without compromising quality.
So that RFQ has closed. We have received 15 responses to RFQ, and we are currently rolling through all the evaluating those. I would expect we're shooting to be back here in front of you guys on December 1st of the year with the first pass through those developers and some recommendations, some options, and we'll go from there.
And it's my understanding from various conferences that I've attended that partners for vertical construction, they aren't really interested in a project that it hasn't received entitlements and zoning and some of this infrastructure work. Is that consistent with what your experience has been?
We have had plenty of interest for this project.
At what point?
For vertical, correct, yes.
So the question is, how much of the phase 0 infrastructure has to be completed before we can look at getting a partner for vertical and perhaps having them do some phase 0 stuff?
So if we were going to have a development partner do the phase 0 work, I would say that this is the point to pause and make that change. You don't want to muddy the waters too much between trying to hand that. You need a stop point, right? And the accident infrastructure work and turning that site over to the developer partner. Right now, the way the RFQ was issued was that we would have the site ready for the development partner with all the access and infrastructure completed. If it was council's desire to engage a development partner and see if anybody was interested in completing this work, the time pauses now.
Thoughts on this?
I mean,
Yeah,
we're just not good at this. We've proven it over and over again. What we thought our budget was going to be on this, which was already making me personally uncomfortable. We can't continue making these same mistakes over and over again. We've got to find somebody who does this day in and day out and does it well and has relationships and understands how to do this and perform this work and entrust them with it. We don't have unlimited funds. It's not responsible. Pause.
Well, this is a work session, so we're not going to do that decision tonight, but this is a budget of that budget, and if council sees fit. So let's continue through this presentation, and
Right, I'd like to say one thing.
Yeah.
On the phase 0, you said that a lot of these additions of scope were from when we first started talking about the cost for the separate grade underpass for the bike trail. That's a big expense, and that during that process we decided that we wanted, but it wasn't included in the original 15 million.
Correct.
Yeah, a list, I think would be useful for us to help understand this, if we could have a list of when these added scopes were added to the project.
Sure, and if it helps council with that previous number, when we had to sell and complete that estimate in 2020 as an SD estimate, we bounced that cost off other like projects. We also looked at the Burlingame project. It seemed reasonable in 2022. I'll just throw out a number because Burlingame is something we've all seen. The Burlingame infrastructure was $620,000 an acre. That $14 million number is $1.4 million an acre. Now, not apples to apples, because there's the whole CDOT piece of that, but at the time, when we looked at what construction inflation was and also the complexity of the project, it seemed perfectly reasonable to myself and others that that was a good number. So I don't want, people to think, oh, we just took that for what it was. We looked at other projects, other multifamily projects, and compared the cost of very similar like projects. It seemed reasonable at the time. I hope, and I'm optimistic that we can come in, under this $45 million number that we're floating. But that's the estimate that we've got to work with, and that's the information we're going to, so.
Understood, thanks. Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Any question on this one cap maintenance project for the 150?
Yeah, could you give a brief description of that one again? for
Yeah,
everyone,
sure.
please?
So that's just funds. We did offer homeowners at the Burlingame Phase 3 project a 2-year warranty, and this is funds for any issues that we might have. To date, we had I don't want to say a flurry, but we had significant warranty. I don't want to say significant. We had some warranty requests right off the bat, but everything seems to be rolling pretty good right now. So hopefully that should be more than enough to cover anything that comes up.
And is the GC ultimately covering any of those costs, or?
So the GC is responsible for all the common area, walls out, yeah. So this is for anything inside the units. If we have washing machine failures, if there's light, we've had some lights fail, we've had some fans fail. Any electrical, we've had to replace some breakers and whatnot, any of that, this is what that's covering.
And can we recover that from Gurdon ultimately, some of that?
So Gearden is scheduled to pay us $3.2 million. That's 3 payments. The first payment's due tomorrow.
Understood, but that's related to a specific issue. For some of the warranty things, like, do we have a warranty on the interior of the units?
We do have
with them
yes, we do
beyond
have a
that?
warranty with Gearden, correct. Yep.
So is this just the cost to administer the warranty work, or?
So this is the cost to administer the warranty work, yes. Yep, and then we could potentially go back to Gearden. I want to see how the payments are going to shake out with those guys.
Yeah, well, I think we should. I mean,
Yeah.
if we have a warranty from them and we're responsible for administering it, in theory, they should be reimbursing for the cost of the materials at the very least.
Sure. And they have shipped us things such as fans and lights and whatnot. We say, hey, look, we need lights, and they actually gave us some backstock, so they've been reasonably amenable with helping us out with that.
There is a timing component that council should be aware of with some of the appliances, for example, are out of manufacturer warranty, and so this is where we kind of close that gap too. So,
Understood.
Yeah, I was just going to add on what you just said, Tyler, that closing and delivery of these units was delayed for quite a while, and by the time that people actually taking possession, that some of those warranties, manufacturer warranties had expired, and we wanted to give the owners assurance that that they were going to get the full warranty and not lose out of it because of the delays in delivery.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Please. On the 1.7 million of operating costs in this department, do you have any breakdown on that?
There's a breakdown, let me go back here, between,
Of 2.5 operating, 1.7 specifically of administrative costs.
Yeah, I'll just point out, if you look at 2025 to 2026, the supplementals are all one-time in 2025, and that's really what's driving the higher number. There's 2 FTEs that live within the administrative piece, and then other operating, I will kind of defer to you.
is there any, I guess specifically what operating funds are you looking, or operating expenses are you
Just
looking?
the administrative line. So I get the property facilities maintenance is inclusive of the paving project, which is what's spiking that so much, so I get that.
So the majority of that's going to be the payment going to APSHA for the city provides.
How much of the 1.7 is that?
It's almost $1 million, I believe, of that total. Maybe actually more than that, 1 point.
It was 700 and change in 2024.
That's right.
And then we're going up the 354, so call it 1.1 is the city's share of the 620 fund APSHA expenses.
And then you definitely have 2 FTEs, as Matt said, that are existing FTEs. So that's our housing development director, and then another analyst that's booked to this fund. And then we also have some administrative fees, like paying for a portion of tax collection services, because obviously this is a fund that receives a lot of tax revenue. So it helps support for the auditing and collections of taxes and things like that. But the
Okay,
majority of that by
so just
far
to
is
make sure I
APSA.
understand this perfectly, $1.3 million in '25, more or less, is APSA, including the supplemental request.
And staff.
I'm gonna double check on the APSA fund just to give it to you.
Did that include the $200,000 for the grant program?
Yes.
So it's actually 1.4 million from both the city and from the county for the APSA. 1.4 of that 1.7 is APSA related.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thank you.
Rob, when that comes back to us, I think we're gonna have a lot of questions about the lumberyard. And one would be about how that inclusion of the phase zero and stuff would integrate with the RFQ and RFP process that we've got going on, so.
So are you looking for specifically kind of where we're drawing the line and where the handoff process between the
Yeah.
city and a development partner?
Yeah, I mean, in my understanding of it, we're talking about if we were to include that in the scope of a partnership, how would that impact that partnership? If on one hand that by bringing in a developer now reduces costs of that phase zero work, that's one item. But if it also is beneficial because that spreads it over a partnership project lifespan, that might be beneficial. But I'm just not sure about, what that benefit would be. And again, where we are with the RFQs and where we are with the potential RFPs and how that would integrate into the process that we have. As you said, you want to draw a hard line where one starts and one stops and such. And so I just want to know a little bit more about that as we discuss this next time around.
Sure.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Daniel Maldonado, Streets Superintendent. Streets is a customer service oriented department. Our operations focus on infrastructure and maintenance on the community's travel corridors, which allows for a safe lived-in community choice. Streets Department is a small team. That does a lot of work. You may not see us as much as other departments, but I know you definitely see the work we do out there. Over the last few years, we've struggled with some staffing shortages, and this team held it together, and we provided a level of service that high quality level of service that we've always provided. So this team is dedicated to keeping the travel corridors safe for the community. The Streets Department revenues come from the state highway contract and user tax, as well as the motor vehicle registration. Streets Department also received the city's share of the county road and bridge taxes, which Pickens County is projecting up $50,000 in 2025. Streets Department revenues are budgeted at roughly $500,000 in 2025. On the expense side, labor is our largest expense within the Streets Department, made up of 13 FTEs. The two largest programs are the street management and fleet management, which supports street cleaning and maintenance, snow and ice removal, and repair and maintenance of the city vehicles. The fleet dollar amount decreased significantly in 2025 due to the advancement of the streets heavy equipment and the 3 police vehicles in 2024. These are capital projects, fleet project, and then our streets facility maintenance and our exterior maintenance of the streets building. Any questions?
Bill?
Thanks, Daniel, and I wanted to just give you a quick commendation for quick responses to things on Aspen 3 about some potholes on my block, and I can't believe how quickly you guys addressed it, so great job. This is a question that maybe kind of spans between engineering perhaps and streets, but we've had some conversations about improving the alleyways throughout the city and exploring that, and I don't know if money needs to be in this budget or in engineering's budget, but I want to make sure that the expiration of that effort and information on that effort is coming up. We haven't had any presentation on it yet. I want to make sure that's happening and that you have the resources to do so.
I think that's a question for Tyler.
Yeah, I can jump in here, Bill. I think your request has been heard and noted. Our engineering department is working on an assessment of not only our city street system, but also our alley system, and is planning to return to you guys with probably a work session, if not a work session info only, about this exact thing. I think it's important to keep in mind that we've maintained the alleys the same way for a number of years. And our budget is setting aside appropriate funds for that level of service. It would be, to your point, it would be a conscious decision by council to move resources to take that to a different level of service if you guys so desire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Mayor Tory and City Council. I'm Kiefer for Police, and I'm here today with Lincoln Suresh. He's my Assistant Chief of Administrative Aspen tonight, so I hope you can hear me all right. In addition to our updated mission statement that you can see here, I'd love to share the Police Department's new philosophy statement that's the result of a collaborative team effort. The members of our organization embody the community policing philosophy. We collaborate with our community to maintain and enhance the safety of our neighborhoods. We value crime prevention, we respect and care about others, and we strive to improve the quality of life for all. We accomplish our mission and philosophy by aligning our work with your council goals, and while we support and collaborate with other city departments, the police department is especially focused on our work to support council's customer-focused government and community building and health goals.
Where is that middle picture from?
It's down in the garage. Okay, thank you. We completed the first phase of a department reorganization with an emphasis on building first responder staffing. Here you can see that 65% of the operating budget will be dedicated to the operations division. This is comprised of what you see here for patrol services and also for our community response officers. These are often our employees who are the first point of contact with community members, and it best aligns us to support your goals. I have 3 supplemental requests for your consideration this year. First, I'd like to mention we are awarded several grants that have a net zero budget impact. These grants provide the team evidence-based training, skills, and opportunities to educate others as well as enforce traffic violations. As we know, law enforcement staff suffer from acute stressors, so I'm especially pleased to share we have been awarded a wellness grant that provides counseling services to our staff, but also for the first time, their family members. Due to ongoing software cost increases and a request to fund a new regional public safety IT analyst, I am requesting an additional $100,000 for Aspen's allocation to the Pitkin County Regional Communications Center. While this is a significant increase from 2024 I, along with all of our other first responder member agencies, do support the IT analyst position as we look to innovate and streamline our emergency response services, upgrade our critical software, and also upgrade our mapping systems. Thank you, Matt. This supplemental request is to continue funding LADRIS, an emergency evacuation planning software tool you've had an opportunity to hear about recently in work sessions and was previously funded through the Special Events Department. Due to our emergency preparedness responsibilities and partnerships with other first responders, I am requesting this tool be funded for an additional year out of the police department's budget. In an upcoming work session scheduled in November, we'll also highlight how LADRIS, along with other software, is helping us to better prepare our community for evacuation, shelter in place, and area of refuge recommendations and communications during emergencies. Thank you, Matt. I am also asking for your consideration on 4 capital projects. First, the police department's in-car and portable radios provide critical and timely communication capabilities for our first responders. Unfortunately, in 2025, Motorola will no longer provide replacement components for our current model, so I am recommending the radios be replaced. As noted here, all first responders in the region are going to be replacing this equipment, and so this request reflects a significant negotiated cost savings. The police department is equipped with 2 victim, witness, and suspect interview rooms that are specifically designed and equipped to provide essential law enforcement services. However, in past years, increases to the number of records personnel who were hired to provide support around legislatively mandated body-worn camera systems has eliminated our ability to use one of these rooms. It is essential, as noted earlier, and best practice to have at least 2 interview rooms where individuals can be securely separated and a private area where confidential and sensitive body-worn camera video can be reviewed and redacted. For this reason, I am requesting a lobby renovation so record staff can be relocated, freeing up the second interview room, providing additional support for walk-in lobby customers, and creating a secure, private working area for body-worn camera processing. The police department has deferred in recent years a request to replace the VMS signs that are shared across multiple city departments. These signs provide another mechanism for the city to relay critical information to the motoring public, but we have a gap in service during winter months. To provide a year-round messaging and mitigate this gap, I am requesting the replacement of 1 out of 5 of these signs with a lightweight portable version. Additionally, I am recommending we purchase 2 automated license plate readers, known as LPRs, that can be retrofitted to the current inventory. As we've discussed previously, the license plate reader technology was extremely instrumental in helping us solve several crimes, and our increased utilization of technology demonstrates our continued improvements in customer service and processes.
Question, Kim?
Yes.
Are those license recognition, are those involved with parking enforcement as well?
Parking enforcement does have license plate readers that they're utilizing on theirs. I'm not as intricately knowledgeable on that.
They work different. It's the same technology, but it's different. Here, this is stationed in a location, checking all the cars that go by it. Whereas in parking, these are mounted on our, I forget what they're called.
Gophers.
The little gophers, thank you. Around on the gophers are driving past to do the license plate reading. So there's just the potential to share information is there. However, I would just want to explore a little more value to the parking department. I think it's the police department benefiting from having more of this, particularly associated when we're managing possible criminal activity and vacating those suspects vacating the area. We want to be supportive of.
The other offer is an alert system in our vehicles as to be alerted when we have somebody who's committed a crime and is coming into our city. It will provide an alert system to all of our police officers in the field.
So are these automated so that there are constantly issues of license plates coming in and out?
Yes, sir.
And how long is that information retained?
We'll have to develop a policy around it, to mirror what Pitkin County is already doing, but I don't recall exactly what their retention is. It can be quite variable, but we have pretty stringent rules around the use of it.
Yeah, just privacy, Fourth Amendment rights is what I'm getting at, my concern.
Absolutely. I will say that as police officers, we're not allowed to access any of the data that's in that system unless we are investigating a criminal matter or we have somebody who is lost, for example, like someone who's elderly or a child.
One more to tag onto Ward's comments there, and I know I want to ask it anyway. This will not speed camera, photo radar type of thing. This is purely to assist with crime.
Photo radar capability, that's with the system.
Thank you.
Okay, and then finally, the police department has 22 life-saving AEDs. 18 of these currently are deployed in vehicles. We were initially due to request to replace 50% of these in 2025. However, due to rapidly changing technology, I am requesting a full replacement. The reason for the full replacement request is because Aspen, ambulance, and fire are both utilizing the updated equipment, and it's critical that during the transfer of patients that our systems are able to align with one another. We are also in discussion with HR to consider replacing AEDs across all of the other city departments as well. This is our summary slide. Are there any questions we can answer for you?
Yeah, we'd previously, at a high level, discussed a 24-hour holding facility at the, perhaps at the garage. Has further consideration been given to that and as a capital improvement and what that would benefit our community?
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't advanced our thought about that. We have found that new detox center that's been stood up in Glenwood Springs is meeting our need quite well. We have only had one time where we were denied services, and it was just because they were full. They have 6 beds, but otherwise we are finding ourselves being fully supported in that area of our detox center. I will say also, depending on the future of the jail, we have some potential use there as well, although I do recognize that we're potentially several years out on that.
I was having a casual conversation with a couple officers and a couple of public service people, and I said, I've never refused a funding request from the police department, to which the response was, well, how about a helicopter?
Yep, that would be my team.
Or a tow truck. Kim, where'd you get the number for the lobby renovation cost from?
We worked in collaboration with Aspen, and we have, since, Rob, do you want to speak to that? I don't want to put you on the spot. Him and his team did help us with some preliminary funds that we spent this year to make sure that our costs were in line with what we would need.
Yeah, so we have a design, and we worked with architect and a local contractor to come up with the number.
I feel good about it being adequate to cover project.
The information I have is as good as.
Okay, thanks.
These are a lot more palatable numbers than the previous.
I want, well, that's probably why I bring it up, because it seems so relatively small compared to all the other things that we're looking at. But I do understand the need for it and want to support it. I just want to make sure that we get the number right the first time.
Yeah, that number is much more recent and from a contractor and the architect that we trust. I feel good about it.
Great.
Thank you.
I just had 2 comments. One is with that lobby remodel, and I understand there are design elements that you need for safety and operations. I hope that it is still as welcoming as it can be. And then I wanted to ask you about, when we were talking a little bit about speed control and stuff, the speed limits in town don't seem to be followed very well, especially in high season. And we'd had some conversations a while ago, Sarah, about the potential for those pole-mounted your speed signs. I think that maybe engineering's talking about perhaps, but I was just wondering, I don't know if it's appropriate here or in another one, but yes, I was just wondering if the city
It
was
actually will be part of
the
the fall supplemental that'll be coming to you in November.
And the ad also, Mayor Tory, that, yeah, the remodel, definitely, we want to create very warm and welcoming atmosphere, so we will make sure to take note of that you've suggested. And then I also was going to say that VMS sign that I mentioned as the replacement, the idea behind that one is to tell the motoring public what their speed is and what the speed limit is. It's just that the other ones are on those large bases, and we can't deploy in the winter, and we do get winter requests. Just to add as well on replacement.
So, Mr. Mayor, as Matt alluded to, you'll see this request come as part of the fall supplemental. I believe engineering is, and I'm doing this off of memory, so bear with me, is planning to deploy 3 initially, with maybe another 5 scheduled throughout the city. We're trying to hit high traffic areas with higher than 80 percentile observed speeds. So they are coming. The deployment may seem simple, but finding an electric source and something that's aesthetically reasonable for the community is not always the easiest, especially in historic areas.
I was hoping that some of them would run off of solar.
So we've experimented with solar, and we may need to resort to that in some areas. We've had mixed results during winter conditions with a small array and a battery. We find those to be marginally reliable. So yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll see it again in the supplemental. Thank you. Any other questions? APD? All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Beck. Joined with Mike Tente this year. Happy to have him join, and Austin's over there as well. I love this photo. It's so much what our department does in this community and really the broader landscape as you look beyond the limits of our town. Whether it's the partnerships with Pitkin County Open Space on the management of North Star Preserve or Smuggler Mountain Open Space, or the blanket of urban forest that you see over most of town. Or if you look closely, you'll see our 35 parks, all of our trails, and it really just highlights that there's no corner of this town where our team does not work. So, as we all know, we're predominantly funded by our 1.5-cent sales tax. This has been providing close to $20 million over the last few years. You'll notice the dip in 2026 associated with the projections from the Finance Department regarding the airport closure. And I also want to call out here that we've been successful on 2 recent grants with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. One for improvements at the Cozy Point Ranch Archery Range, and another one to support our growing wildlife program. And both those grants really illustrate our work to support Council's goals to protect the environment. On our expenditure side, our core functions of maintaining safe and enjoyable public spaces continue to utilize about 1/3 of our budget, and that's illustrated here in the Parks Management line. Increasingly, our functions related to natural areas and management of the urban forest are increasing, and they consume the next 1/3 of our budget when you add those with the trails management. And finally, supporting our Parks and Rec administrative team, as well as the facilities maintenance for our Parks and Recreation facilities, round out the other 1/3 of our budget. We do have one modest fee proposed. Over the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen incremental changes to how our parks are being used for summer camps and childcare programs. This is a very modest fee. This is per program, per year. And really, this isn't about offsetting our expenditures as much as this is providing us tools to engage with operators in our spaces and ensure that we are seeing good stewardship and we're able to manage the frequency of use in our spaces. We have been working in conjunction with Kids First as we've vetted this throughout the last few months, and our ranger teams have engaged with a number of operators in the public space this year to kind of understand what this might look like. This will work in conjunction with updates to our park rental policy that we're planning to bring to you in the spring. But again, I just want to highlight that this is really about having an ability to issue a permit for day camp usage and engage on that activity in the public space. We have 3 operational supplemental requests for you to consider this year. And I think the first and most important one is for us to touch on the creation and dedication of funding for natural resource programs and our ranger programs. So increasingly, this is a big function of our department, And historically, those functions have been absorbed by the open space program and spread across other programs within the Parks Fund, such as parks or trails. I want to touch briefly on both the Ranger program and the Natural Resource program. I'll start with the Ranger program. And over the last 5 years, our program with our Rangers has increasingly become a critical component of our work. We all know that there's evolving trends around e-bikes, camping, dog leashes, and waste across this community, and our Modest Ranger team is busy throughout the summer managing those programs. We're requesting a total of $63,000 to support our Ranger program, with the majority of that kind of dovetailing with what Kim just brought up about radios, is supporting an upgrade and the associated fees to the radio program that we use, which is the same as the police department. The Natural Resource program is another program within this request. As you'll recall, we asked for a new position last year to support council's goal to protect the environment and bolster our ability to manage the wildlife and wildfire programs. At that time, no additional financial resources were requested, and we anticipated that with the formation of that program that we'd have greater structure and development and be able to define the budget requirements once we hired that person. We're requesting $86,000 to support the Natural Resource program. That's spread across a number of things, but I want to call out that the majority of that is dedicating increasing funds for a noxious weed program and partnering with other groups in the management of natural resources, such as the Wildfire Collaborative in the Roaring Fork Valley. Total operating expenses requested within this funding is $150,000. On top of that, we're requesting an allocation of $37,000 to support a seasonal that will be used either as an intern or a seasonal to bolster our capabilities in the summer when bears are most active, when our noxious weed program is fully running, and we're hoping that that additional position will bolster our team's capabilities. Any questions on that?
Ma'am, then Bill?
This position, I was going to bring up eventually, but Roaring Fork Safe Passages, I know you've had conversations with them. This position will be a liaison to that organization?
We're not asking for a position this year. This is only operational. So our position that we have currently is a liaison directly. So when we shifted wildlife program from the police department into our department, our ICE was hired from the police department, and she had already engaged heavily with us. Roaring Fork Safe Passages.
Okay, well, that is happening. Thank you.
Bill?
Matt, could you talk briefly about the use of radios, like why cell phones, which I'm sure your people also have, like why do we need both for your department?
Yeah,
Thanks.
our ranger out there, like a police officer, they're communicating should they need to with dispatch. They're responding to incidents that are called into 911, and so it's critical for them to have radios in their functions. It also allows them to communicate with the police department should they need additional assistance if they're on something that is escalating, and it's integral to how our team functions.
Got it. So this is not for the team to go, hey, go warn the sprinklers in this park. This is for rangers, really. 10, 15 years ago, everyone in the Parks Department used radios for communication. Now we're all just. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, oftentimes our rangers are responders on site. Oftentimes with Rio Grande Trail, heavily used corridor, whether it's Swiftwater Rescue down at Stein Park, a lot of times our rangers are the ones that are first on site for emergencies. So.
Makes sense. Thanks.
And I'm curious, how many, do you have any idea of how many bike injury accidents have gone on the, Rio Grande?
I don't have it. I don't have any accident data at my fingers, but we can engage with the ambulance district and see if that's something they're tracking. I don't know that they're tracking it specifically on Piper Bicycle. Look into that if you're curious.
I think going forward would be good to have that as an item to track.
Also started some very early conversation understanding the hospital's emergency room data, because there's certainly plenty of accidents that happen that are never reported to first responders. We actually think there's a higher propensity of those than the more serious crashes. So maybe it's just a broken arm compared to a complete wipeout. So we will follow up on that as well and let you know what we hear back.
Thank you.
Our second supplemental request is related to labor expenses. We're asking for allocation of overtime funds. To date, our department has basically functioned without an overtime allocation. We did some analysis and looked back over the last 5 years. Our average, excluding 2020, where we did not have significant overtime, is $75,000. You'll recall several years ago we shifted from having a predominantly seasonal summer workforce, or a significantly more seasonal workforce in the summer, to a tighter, smaller team of permanent labor. As a result, our ability to absorb overtime when it comes up was diminished. This allocation will provide us a little bit of a buffer in our labor budget that allows us to respond when weather events come up. Snow removal oftentimes is our biggest driver of overtime, and when we get into some extended spring storms, oftentimes we're looking at our teams to come in for extra days and complete the tasks that are needed. We also see weather events outside of winter where we'll bring in overtime labor, and this offsets some of those expenses. We're also asking for $22,000 to provide an allocation of funding for certain benefits such as awards and PTO cash outs that are increasingly challenging our budget and our ability to absorb those within budget.
Matt, have you been successful in keeping adequate staff? What is staffing and retention?
That's exactly why we're requesting funding, is we see very little turnover in our department. So the inherent savings that you see when there is labor turnover is pretty diminished in our department.
Thank you.
Finally, the most mundane of our supplemental requests, our core functions around hauling trash out of the downtown, maintaining our portable toilets, and the fees associated with software and custodial services have been increasing to the point that they're stretching our budgets a little thin. And when we look back and look at actual expenses, these relatively modest additional supplemental requests will keep us in line and in the black.
We gave approval for a capital project for, I think, additional officer improvements on campus. How are you doing on that?
So we received our land use approval last month. We're submitting our building permit in May, and we're aiming to go out to bid. You'll recall we initially approached the project with a construction manager's general contractor approach. We've completed that. They've given us a guaranteed net price. We've decided to go ahead and bid project and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. The guaranteed maximum price exceeded our budget. So we're hopeful that we're going to see some competitive bids. I expect that bid to go out, the RFP to go out here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Hoping to break ground sometime in Q1 of 2025. We are funded this year in 24, so that will likely be a capital carry forward request.
Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
I want to talk about 2 capital projects that we're looking to. The first is CoA Park. This is really driven, the volleyball sand that's out there is really past its useful life. It's currently jagged, rough, and quite dusty. We intend to replace the sand with volleyball grade material. And while we're mobilized on site, we have an opportunity to do some minor improvements, and those are things like increasing native planting, reducing water use, increasing accessibility, and integrating some additional picnic tables and seating. So that's sort of our goal for 2025 at CoA Park.
I never knew sand had a useful life.
Ward, when we hear from our volleyball players, they let us know about the useful life.
What's the aim behind reducing turf areas with native plants?
So, Mayor Tory, the goal of that is we want to protect our highly used turf areas. And CoA Park does have areas where the turf is utilized quite a bit. If you go out there during the mother load, or even just on a day where there are camps out there that use this park, there are areas that are highly used. Conversely, there are areas that are underutilized. So it represents a lot of turf that we're watering, mowing, and maintaining And we see benefits that align with council's goals to reduce the amount of water use there and restore those native areas.
I hope that it doesn't restrict I mean, when the park is in use, it's in full use, so I just hope it doesn't impact those events too much.
We're looking at a pretty modest back where the porta potty is.
Other questions?
The next capital project that I want to the remodel of the Armory for us presents an exciting opportunity to revitalize Connor Park and re-envision it as a vibrant community space. Based on community feedback that we've gotten, we're looking to accomplish three things here. One is to support a vibrant park with community gatherings. Two is to create a welcoming park. And three is to really improve accessibility and safety. We're in the very early sketch stages, so the sketch up on the screen is some of the initial concepts that we use to both develop some of the ideas that we'd like to see in the park and to test those out with how they would function with an Armory remodel. Parks and Open Space is really excited about the positive interaction that can happen here with the Armory, and we look forward to developing this project.
I want to quickly just point out that the out-year budget for construction is not a vetted number. Because that's in the out years, because next year is really the year where we're going to be looking at finalizing the design. We won't be able to specify all the materials, all of the costs associated with those. And so I would expect that number to increase depending upon material selection and the amount of hardscape improvements that are contemplated as this design moves forward.
The depiction here, there's a large tree. Is that circle with a drip line? Is that what's represented there?
Yeah, I apologize for the sort of rough sketch. It's part of my process in doing some of the quick design work here. The sort of reddish dot in the middle of what's labeled as a deck, that represents the trunk of the large spruce tree that's out there, and the squiggly line that's in a circle shape around it is the approximate location of the drip line. Because almost 40 or 50% of the park is dominated by that tree, and we do see that tree as a valuable resource, one way to expand the use there is to put a deck that floats over the roots underneath that tree. And really, that opens up quite a bit of possibilities here.
It's interesting. I don't know if this is something that's appropriate there, the community would want or not. So this will come back to us for another round of review and stuff. Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but as you dig into it, please just make sure you're talking with the Armory design and development team. You know, logistical expectations about service on that deck, given the adjacency to the Armory. We don't want to take away the vibrancy of the Armory, so just want to make sure that you're working. I'm supportive of doing something in that park. Just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about what that something is.
And just to be clear, we're doing this project because of the Armory project.
Understood.
Should that project pause or cancel, we would also delay our changes here. These site improvements are directly related to the concepts that are being vetted with you all right now. So should things change, should there be more retail, we will look at how this morphs. This design is merely a very conceptual sketch at this point, and I think as we're moving through the design process with the Armory team and asset team in the lead, we're supporting them with this change.
And we have been collaborating quite closely with them.
It might work great, or it might be next to a construction site for, I don't know. We'll talk
In
about
our
that.
timing, we would absolutely want to align the timing of construction with an appropriate opening window. So if the Armory pushes to 2030, we'll look to align our construction window with that last year that they're on the.
Oh, understood. Okay.
Mike, mentioning under the spruce tree, there just about every day I'm in town for the Saturday markets, and that's just dirt under there. Nothing grows under that tree. So I'm curious how we can regain or to gain some of that space. There are a couple of tables in there now and some more that are put up on the Saturday market, but I see it as an opportunity to gain some community spaces, and I trust, Mike, that you're gonna do a good job on it.
Thank you.
A fairly west, as you recall, the Parks Department basically has the largest fleet, I think, in the city. This upcoming year, we're replacing 2 pickup trucks, one of our parks admin/commuter vehicles, which is a Prius. We have a trailer as well as 3 pieces of equipment. The 2 cat skid steers are annual rentals for a total of $346,025. Following the June site visit with City Council and the Open Space and Trails Board, the Open Space and Trails Board recommended in July to include this as a budget proposal for your consideration. They also asked staff to seek a donation agreement with Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association for partial funding of the Meralt Skills Trail project. At this point, staff are looking to City Council to provide a final go, no-go for this project to be funded, which essentially would indicate to us that you're looking for us to finalize agreements and further the design and the construction of the project.
Thanks. Start with board.
Yeah, I really support a mountain bike skills park, but not here. I think that Buttermilk or Tyack would be a really good location for this. So as far as go, no-go, I would say no-go on this. I don't support spending money to develop a piece of property that I don't think is ideally situated for the park. But where I've seen these in other locations, they're really popular, and Buttermilk or Tyack has parking and a lot of advantages. So for me, it's a no-go.
Along with suggestion of Buttermilk as a location or other locations that are potential for this, or have other sites been explored, including Buttermilk? And
well, Buttermilk's not our space. There are conversations over the years that we've been hearing, but I don't really want to speak to our ability to the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space to lead the charge on Buttermilk. I can say that we've looked at other spaces in our inventory, looking back even 10 years. And I don't think we do have an adequate space in our Parks and Open Space portfolio at this juncture to move it to an alternative location.
Have you had any discussions with entities that are responsible for either Base of Islands or Buttermilk in doing a partnership development in one of those locations?
So I'm going to just jump in here first. We're really trying to get clarity on the council's into the concept of a skills park and also about this location. I think if the council is committed to the trail, then we would engage with the partners. But that likely involves potential financial contribution from the city, and would like to have a read of council before we started talking to others. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'll get some more input before I share my thoughts.
I'm a go. I think it's great. Where it ultimately ends up, I'm less concerned with. I have a suitable location, but I'm a definite go.
Thanks. Sam?
I want this brought back as an action item. I want Mike Pritchard to be able to comment on this. I want the community to be able to comment on this in public meeting, and I more wanted to talk about the process tonight. I appreciate you bringing this up, especially because it has to do with the budget, but I really want to talk about this in a regular meeting where people can come and publicly comment on it.
Okay, well, my take was that I would like in the conversations about other locations before giving a go on this location. So if we, let's see, you're a go, so you don't mind a work session or, an action item, or public discussion?
Yep.
Public discussion, action,
Public discussion. I have had a conversation with a couple of people from the ski company, and I would like to see if we could. I would support spending some money to develop this with a partner. If that partner was a ski company, if it was at Buttermilk, which would be adjacent to the school campus and even closer than this property. But I definitely support the idea of having it, but I just don't think this is the right place for it. So if we want to have conversations, fine.
Okay, so Sarah, from your lead, I take it that there is interest in a bikes park, but this location has questions around it. So what would be the process to get further ahead? Would you like a public meeting to include some public, or can we start discussions about alternative locations prior to that?
I think that's all the council's call. I think what we really are looking for is whether to leave this $240,000 in the 2025 budget or not. You always have the ability to put it in or to later, if you choose to take it out now or in this decision-making process over the next month. Where I'm still focused at is the, if it's on the list, the presumption is this is your preferred space until you tell us through public action otherwise. So I heard one of you wanting to take testimony yourselves, was pretty unusual for an individual capital project. But we can certainly provide you all of that written input. I believe you received some of it today, as well as some members of the community that reached out directly to you. But if you want, Mr. Mayor, it's your call of whether you want a work session that has public comment in it.
Okay, thanks, and I'm gonna just leave it, sit in the budget process for right now, and then we'll make a decision about what kind of meeting we bring it back to. Thank you. Before we leave that, public outreach and input on the bike skills trails, have we had a formal outreach?
Yes, we've had a lot of outreach for all the way back to when the master plan was updated to for the Merle Open Space that initially identified it. Council had a joint site visit with the Open Space and Trails Board that also opened to members of the community to join you. And then we have received solicited and unsolicited community feedback, both for and against the project throughout, particularly I would say since that site visit.
Are there any notes from any of those meetings or outreach that can be shared with council members?
Sure, I think you've received most directly, but we will assemble all of that in an info only to you.
That'd be great.
So our intentions won't be to summarize it. There's no need for us to interpret the public's comments to this one.
I'd also ask if you can engage CoA when it does come back, you come back with, if there are viable alternatives, please let us know. Because anytime we say yes or no to anything, if we say no to this, maybe we're saying yes to something else, but I'd rather not have it just be the abyss and rather have know what viable options that might be out there. Because we talk vaguely about CoA, and I did reach out to Pritchard, and he thought Kayak and Islands, terrain was not correct for this, but I'd like to hear it from CoA, and I'd like to hear from other partners might be viable as far as locations go. Want a skills park? That's really the question.
Yeah, we'd probably come to you closer to next budget cycle. That will take a little while if we're doing site analysis to formulate any recommendations. I just want to be transparent with you. It's not something you do in 90 days for something like this, particularly given surveying and topography analysis that needs to be done associated with it. We engaged a planning firm to assist us a bit on this as well.
RFNBA funded the design. They initiated
thank
this.
you. I did provide that funding.
And I think a really important point. This was a proposal that was brought to us, and we've gone through the process of checking in with the community, checking in with all the stakeholders that we know in Merle. And I can say that our staff has talked with most everyone here who has an opinion on it, probably on site. And this is definitely one that has solicited a lot of feedback, and our team has stepped up and done a tremendous amount of outreach. And to that point, it's all out there. And I think we are looking for a decision to be made on the Merle sooner than later, because this, shifting to a location is, as Sarah points out, a big change, a big lift, and that prioritizes our trails team's workload significantly. And so we're taking other things off the plate to engage a multi-pronged, multi-stakeholder approach of developing a bike park with City of Aspen leading, looking for partners. That's a big change and something that we would have to prioritize and shift to.
Yeah, and I would say I think Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association and the SKICO hopefully has information on this as far as potential viable alternatives as well. So there might be.
Does the city need to be the lead on that, or is that really between SKICO and the Mountain Bike Association?
I would have the city be a partner in it, and that they do some of the outreach to talk about things. And I think we can be a money contributor if we are saying no to city open space, because it still contributes city residents.
And the places you're naming are outside the city limits. So the role of the city is significantly diminished in those conversations. It's really about someone else coming up with a proposal for you to review and consider whether you want to fund at that point.
And, I mean, us contributing a token amount of money might be enough to keep it free at Buttermilk versus Skiko monetizing it or something like that. So I think it's important we stay engaged.
I think it'd be an ideal opportunity to do a partnership with the ski company, their land, but I think they're entering into a long-range plan for Buttermilk. So I think the lead would be the county on this once county and Mountain Bike Association and Skiko. But I'm open to putting some money into this because I think it'd be a great benefit to our community.
As staff,
Go ahead, Matt.
as staff, we can absolutely circle up with Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association after this and determine if they want to lead this and if they're looking for some funding. And should they say yes to that, we can come back with that information. But I do think that likely is the appropriate, given it's not our space, it's in the county. We can be a player, and we do that in a number of ways with the county. Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association's been a stakeholder in the Smuggler Mountain Open Space Plan and things like that. So we function well together, but it's about finding the right leader for that kind of proposal.
And I just want them here to be able to defend this, because last we had talked about this, I felt like things were going positively for them, even if I disagreed. But I just want them to be at the table, public comment, be able to present and be able to defend it. If they can't defend it, maybe they can come up with a viable alternative, knowing that this one's dying on the vine. But trying to kill something like this in this position is something I'm uncomfortable with.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go right ahead.
I'm really uncomfortable with that language, that we're trying to kill something. We're providing you, so staff has provided you information, and this is definitely a discussion amongst the four of you that are here to give us direction of what you would like us to do. Does the 100,000 stay in, or does it come out? Right, it's 100. 240, sorry.
240 is project.
Yeah, I mean, that is really what staff's looking like. If you keep it in, then we're assuming we're going to this parcel and we're working on development of this parcel. If you take it out, then it tells us that we're gonna go back to those, those potential partners and say, this isn't gonna work for us. Do you have other ideas? Like, it's really, and, the Mountain Bike Association actually was contacted before I had mentioned this with you. We just did not know that at the time, that another staff member had already been able to reach out and start that conversation, that there was some growing concerns about the feasibility of this project. And I don't know that it's necessary, in my view, to have extra work sessions about that. You have public comment periods, you have ways that you accept emails from all sides of issues that can be used. And I would just encourage you to use that instead of some of the language I heard tonight. That was really disappointing.
It's a perception thing. I mean, that's the way I perceive it.
All right. Your request is for more information. It's noted. We'll figure this out. We're in a budget process right now. Bill?
Yeah, I just would like to suggest we keep the money in for now, make a request that an initial conversation had with SKICO and RFMBA to say, are there alternative sites that have been identified, and is there any level of feasibility study concepting that's been done on those sites? And that can come back to us in an info-only memo, at which point we can make a decision whether to authorize the release of this funding or not.
We're missing one member of our board as well, so we're going to wait for that. You heard it. The way that this is outlined is for funding for this location or funding not for this location. So we can move on through our presentation. I will tell you right now that I do not, from the plans that are put in front of me, I am not supportive of this as the location, and I am interested in other locations.
Thanks. Wrapping up here on our smaller capital projects, we're looking forward to updating some signs across our inventory of spaces. Wagner Park bathroom, those signs have been up for close to 20 years, and those will be refreshed in collaboration with Aspen Historic Society. We're excited about that partnership. We also have several dozen interpretive signs throughout the town. John Spees on our team's been working on inventorying those and developing updates and replacements across our whole system. As I mentioned, we have a couple grants. One of those is the archery range at Cozy Point Ranch, which is grant funded. Others worth calling out here is, I guess that's about it.
Ward, then Bill.
$35,000 for a snowmobile. I don't have a snowmobile. I don't know what snowmobiles cost, but it seems.
Snowmobiles are about $20,000. This budget line is one we just keep the title on, but you'll know that we also groom with tracked UTVs. Those are closer to $35,000 once you add the tracks and heated cab. And so some years, snowmobiles about 20 to 25,000. Other years, when we replace the UTVs, those are closer to 35,000.
An early season use snowmobile out on the golf course.
And we use tracked UTVs for most of our tasks.
Thank you.
Bill?
In terms of sign replacement, will that include the Rio Grande signs that are in bad shape?
Those are actually not ours. I don't believe they're currently on our plan. We'll need to engage with Picken County on that, those allowances, because the Grand Trails Picken County right away. We need to get that.
Okay, let's discuss it because it just looked terrible. I know they're not, let's make sure someone's
Talking
aware
about
of
the solar system, I think that's a high school project.
It was originally a high school project led by Travis Moore, his astronomy club. They've been out for well over a decade, and they need to be updated. Travis Moore since retired, so I think that program has kind of seen a hiatus. But we can absolutely engage with the county on that.
Yeah, I love the idea. It's just they're not, their time has come to be replaced. So
Yeah, it's very cool.
other things just sort of come in here is there's a lot of Cozy Point items on this and putting a lot of resources towards Cozy Point. And it's something I want the five of us to be thinking about is like, do we have good strategy on Cozy Point? Is it worth it? Are we like stewards of the asset, et cetera? So.
I as well have a note here to ask about Cozy Point plan is for 2025 budgeting, but I'm interested in future development at Cozy Point and what that plan looks like.
If I could just touch on that very briefly, because we've essentially placed most projects at Cozy Point on hold. What you see here is our basic upkeep and maintenance. You'll recall last year when we talked about a big focus on Cozy Point Ranch, we had a number of projects, including boarding facility, the riding arena. Those are all on hold while we work through our analysis of available water on the site, which is like an onion, and you peel it away, and we're never finding the center. Until we can answer the question of what is the available water resources for any changes at Cozy Point Ranch, everything's on hold. Those things that you're seeing here are civil site improvements for the compost area. That's the final stage of the land work that we've been doing there. It's immediately adjacent to the archery range, and we really feel that node of the ranch is really important for us to welcome the community in and not see a compost and manure facility and make that as the right site. Otherwise, we have an ongoing project for tractor and implements to update that aging fleet that we inherited from that ranch. Otherwise, there's many ticket items in next year's capital, and in out-year projects, we're going to look at whether or not those move forward.
Yeah, my concerns on Cozy Point is the amount of money we're putting into it and the number of people that are in our community that benefit from it, and if that's the correct balance.
Any other questions on 2025 capital? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is not for 2025, but over tennis courts. I just would love to see more information on that and see that developed into a long-term plan for parks and open space to see if that's a viable thing that we can do and something that we can do in the near future, if not in 2025.
That's a good segue into the rec facilities portion of the presentation.
Mr. Mayor, what we thought we'd do here, because just as a reminder, the Parks and Open Space Fund does get used for some rec facilities, and so I thought I'd go ahead and speak to those projects in the presentation tonight. And I also have Desiree Whitehead and Scott Chisholm here in support if you have some detailed questions here as well. To answer your question, Sam, we are also not in this budget, but we'll be talking about the golf budget, and we have some planning exercises planned to look at indoor tennis at that facility as a part of that effort. So that is on our radar, and it is something that we are going to be taking a look at. So
you'll take a look at, and you might come back and just say, no, it's not possible, or it will be in a work session sometime next year.
Well, I would say it's not possible in 2025 for us to have an indoor tennis facility, but we will be doing a planning effort that will look at some concepts and the analysis of what it might cost to do that out there. So.
Look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. First up here, and this is probably an ongoing theme that you've heard with other departments. We've got a $42,000 ongoing supplemental request for the increasing costs of software, internet services, licensing in our overall IT infrastructure within Parks, Rec, and Culture. Happy to answer any questions that you might have on that at this time.
Just as a friendly reminder, the building's 20 years old, so some of this is original.
Well, and this isn't just for the ARC. Let me be clear that this is for parks facilities, it's for the golf facility, it's for the ARC, it's for the ice garden, it's all across our facilities.
Right. Well, the ARC is the youngest of them all.
And we will be having that conversation next year, so. Okay, so these next two projects, next two slides, I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into, and this certainly speaks to us prioritizing our infrastructure and maintenance for, yes, even the ARC, our aging facilities. ARC was built in 2003, and a lot of the internal components of the facility are reaching their useful life cycle, the end of their useful life cycle. And one of those components is all the electrical wiring guts of the whole facility, if you will. This is a really big project, and what you'll notice here is that for these next two projects, we're taking 2 years to plan for these replacements. In 2025, we've got $50,000 for design and engineering, but the acquisition, the procurement of the parts and installation comes to $910,000 that would be implemented in 2026. A lot of these parts take a long time to acquire, and so we're giving ourselves plenty of time for that procurement, along with the planning with the community, because there's a number of projects that are going to take enough time that we're looking at about a 3-month closure of the ARC to implement a number of different projects, this being one of the larger of those. The next project is tied right into that, also planned for that closure period of the replacement of the control system that really look to Scott Chisholm to speak with about the details of this, but this is the brains, if you will, of the ARC. It ties in the electrical, it ties in all the security, it ties in all these different very complex systems and gives us information as to how it's all performing. Did I do that justice, Scott?
That's consistent. Actually, let's hold off on that and see if council needs it. But that is consistent with our other buildings that we have built, that we have a multi-function master building plan and using a system to control it. Typically, like in this example, it's Johnson Control Switch. If you've built anything that's commercial, it's a pretty common vendor.
Go ahead.
My only comment would be the 3-month closure gives me a lot of indigestion, so I'd like to understand if there's a way to reduce that or eliminate that and what the cost impact of that would be.
Absolutely, and staff is not taking that lightly at all. Just as a reminder, we do a 2-week closure every year up at the ARC, and when we do that, even though they have impacts, as you know, and we plan that closure very, very carefully, and we, like a surgeon, I would say, we try to get as much work completed during that time period as we possibly can into the last hour of that closure. We are making improvements that need to happen every year. When we have in this case, it'll be close to a 25-year-old building that has some very, very significant needs. Other projects like the entire lap pole needs to be replastered. These are big, big projects that take time, but a lot of these projects cannot happen with the facility being open. When we replace the electrical system, there will be no power to that building for an extended period of time. So staff is very, very aware of the implications of an extended closure, and so we would do our darndest to make sure that closure is as brief as we can possibly make it. But I do want to emphasize that these projects will take about a 3-month period to complete.
Yeah, I would just play devil's advocate a little bit. Us and say, air don't close when they have to make electrical upgrades. There's a way. I don't know what the way costs, but I'd like you to explore it.
We're happy to take a deeper dive for sure.
In both these, in a couple of these projects for the ARC in specific, doesn't necessarily allude to kind of increased performance, cost savings, energy savings and stuff. Can you just comment on that?
Absolutely, and Scott and I were talking about this earlier today. The existing system isn't even compatible with a lot of the higher tech, more efficient systems that are being utilized in facilities like this today. This will bring us up to a place where we can utilize more efficient systems, whether it's for making ice or operations in the pool, those kinds of things. So this will be the groundwork, if you will, that'll get us in a place where we can utilize more efficient systems.
Any other questions on this? I don't know if you need support for any of the comments that have been up here. A lot of them are just comments and not direction, but you know, I was interested in the 3-month closure as well, and just wondering how to minimize the impact. That goes for both the timing and the length of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This last project, as you've heard several times in presentation, effort for asphalt needs for Parks and Rec. And so here, obviously, we've got an image of the ARC, but we're also looking at the parking lot down by the Golf and Nordic Pro Shop, Stein Park, along with the resurfacing of the recycling center as well. So the budget for this across all Parks and Rec is $1.2 million.
A quick question for you there, unrelated to kind of the asphalting, but parking being such an issue for many people, and but what I notice at the lots that we have at our different facilities is that they're often full. So you know, unrelated to the resurfacing of it, we don't currently see any capacity that is able to be utilized for any other parking needs at this time. That's a question. Rio Grande parking garage, you know, we have different conversations about long-term parking, and we have different conversations about utilization. Do we have any, the parking lots that are at our facilities, do we have any availability of parking in those for other uses, or not really?
Just to be clear, you're thinking of or asking about the owned parking facilities that could be utilized to supplement?
Yeah, you know, if people were looking at day use at Truscott, if people were looking at day use out here, it just doesn't seem like we have the capacity to allow that, but am I correct there?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't allow other cursory uses for parking, say skiing or bicycle riding or other uses for public parking facility. It's really limited to itself. When we do have special events, like we did this weekend, we partner with the school district to utilize their parking facilities. We do enforcement both here along with Truscott, where the golf parking area and Nordic parking area are, and we do ask people to move out of there to free that up. Parking is an issue that we struggle with from time to time, specifically our special events.
Thank you.
I would just add to that the grants and the 5-year capital of this fund to increase parking in any substantial way, any park or recreation facility. So if that's a priority to the council, that would be something we would want to have some direction on what that looks like. Thank you.
I would be interested in seeing if there's some way to encourage carpooling or not as many vehicles. And I know when you go up to the Arc or the Ice Garden as a hockey player, you got a lot of stuff to bring with you, and there are challenges there. But if there's anything that we can do to encourage carpooling or ride sharing up there, that's more palatable to me than buying more and building more parking spaces.
Certainly, and I would say that with every special event throughout that event organizer, to not only encourage carpooling, but also to strategize parking strategies. And again, whether it's working with our partners at the school district or elsewhere. I know personally from being involved in many Nordic races up at the high school, and every time we pull off an event, there's a whole parking plan that goes out to all the other schools, if you will, and clubs to accommodate for those events. It's never easy, but we do try to push that message of carpool and come into this knowing that parking is going to be a challenge. And just look at capital projects. I'm sure between the team here we can answer any questions you might have.
I'm curious what the life of the or ice making. We just had an emergency replacement of at the Lewis, the ice garden. What is the life expectancy of the ice-making facilities at the Arc?
At the Arc, I'm gonna, Scott, can you answer that question? Thank you. And I would say a lot of it depends on our ability to continue to upgrade existing infrastructure, but I think Scott can probably answer that question.
So what we have here is really ice melt system, kind of in the front part of the entry building. What was before Council a few weeks ago was specific to the refrigeration of the Lewis Ice Arena.
Understand that. My question was, what's the life expectancy of that same equipment, the Arc? What are we looking at? Are we looking at a big expenditure in the next few years, or how long is that those ice makers generally good for?
So that equipment that we just in the process of procured should last for about 24 years. And what you're going to see coming up is, if you recall, that equipment is a part of the greater improvement associated with those refrigeration system. And to Austin's point earlier about efficiencies, so working to replace the entire refrigeration system for the ice arena, the Lewis Ice Arena, in order to gain a more efficient, lower ammonia usage isolation system. So that equipment is, it's last a similar time frame as our current equipment.
Is the existing equipment original?
Yes.
And the original equipment at the Arc, life expectancy is 20 years, 50 years, 20 years?
Yeah, we've reached that life expectancy, which
So
is
we're
why
looking
we're
at in the next couple of years to replace that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Bill?
Could you talk about the first line there, the locker replacement?
Sure. Desiree?
Please.
Yes, hello. So these are the lockers that are within the Arc in our locker room. So locker room, there he is. So replacement of those. Those are some of the original lockers within our facilities. The replacement of those.
And why we need to?
They're starting to wear and tear on them and rust from just the environment of the aquatics area.
And could we paint them? Sand them and paint them?
We have painted them and we've done some different structural pieces with them over the years, but they're getting to a point that they are needing some repair.
Repair or replacement?
Replacement, sorry.
A lot of money in lockers.
They're gonna be awesome. Lock and everything.
I guess my request, I don't know if anyone else shares this interest, but I'd like to know if there's some refurbishment options.
We are looking at these, with these lockers, we are looking at different ways of having the magnets added into them so that there's for safety purposes for people to put their belongings into. So there are some added things that ours currently don't have that we are looking potentially into adding to those lockers to upgrade them.
Yeah, I'm interested in functionality upgrades like that personally. I think they're totally unnecessary. Your own luck if you want to use a locker at the Arc. So if they're degrading totally and there's holes in them, they're cutting people and giving people tetanus, that's one thing. I'm not personally interested in upgrading functionality to modern country club level. It's just not where we should be spending money. So that'd be my one request is, can we understand the alternatives on that?
We can definitely do some research on it. If we could just put that on discussion, I don't understand if the majority of you want that or a majority of you are fine with the request. Thank you.
I support the councilor's initiative to see if this necessary $175,000 expenditure. I don't need to go out and do an inspection myself. I trust you, but I understand his comments.
Same.
Yeah, I think refurbishing these might exceed the cost of replacement with a labor cost, but I look a little bit more granular on how you're spending $175,000.
Yes.
Thanks, Desiree.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's the 100 fund for tonight. Any final questions?
I had just one small item. I was interested in the pedestrian walking malls and the sister city circle that is next to the Wagner Park restrooms. I was interested in what it would take to clear that of snow in the wintertime. It is still an entrance to our parks, and it builds up with about a foot of snow and ice, and I think that it'd be such a better presentation if we were clearing that and maybe making those benches usable to the inside, maybe not to the outside, but to the inside. I don't know if that is something that's can fit into work plans, if that needs budgeting, or even if there is something that can be talked about with sister cities to assist in that. I don't know, but I was just interested in wondering if we can make that present a little bit better.
We can. We intentionally leave that snow on there for the marble. So we go in there and do snow removal. We will run the risk of damaging marble. I suspect those ribbons, I'm going to shoot from the hip here, but I think they're probably in the order of $20,000 to $30,000 a strip, based on some recent pricing for some marble that we've procured for the historic markers around that.
Yes, yes.
So it is at risk of damage and expense. We try it for a year. We tend to remove it during special events so that we have access to Wagner, but the remainder of the winter, we keep as snow. There's also a portion of the Wagner roof that in melt events drains onto that snow, so when it's snow, it goes into there. When it's brick, it turns to glaze ice, so there's also a little bit of structural change we'd need to do.
All right, thank you for all the information. I appreciate that you've looked at it a bit more about it. I'm definitely not interested in making any damage or danger there, so if what we're stuck with is a safety sheet of ice, then I can understand that, but I'll talk to you more about it.
Got it.
Thanks. Yep, Bill?
I think this is probably a Matt or a Pete question, but the transfers out of the 100 fund, where do those go? Why is that so large?
So you have a combination of transfers. Obviously, you have your overhead costs to pay into, and then they're supporting a little fund, as I kind of mentioned, some of the overlapping costs, like the business services unit that pays for their internet costs, or some of the other maintenance items. So those are kind of a little bit smaller. Then you have the internal employee housing charge that all departments pay, basically, to help our employee housing program. But the biggest amount, is really the expiration of the debt service that they still have outstanding. So we centralize any of the governmental funds into the debt service before we make the payment. So that's just a big transfer out for their share.
Great, and Parks' transfers out, transfers out are proportionate to other departments transfer out on a percentage basis?
For the other aspects of things like overhead and things like that. Their debt service is actually basically all but retired at the end of 2025. They only have one issuance that will remain after 2025, and we actually had some big balloon payments these last couple of years of their debt service. That was the way we timed it, just based on cash flow availability. So,
got it. Thanks.
Any more questions on this? I love those kind of
Thank you.
deep questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Pete, you know it.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. And then I have the privilege of presenting a few additional funds tonight that are more in that status quo category that we discussed during kickoff. So starting with the Golf Fund, and these are all in one slide per fund, so high-level summary. If I need to bring back any specific questions, we can do that on the following nights. Golf Fund is an enterprise fund. Revenues are intended to sustain total uses. So for 2025, projected revenues of almost 3.5 million, total uses about 3.3 million. The Golf Fund did come to you in September to discuss their business plan and did a little deeper dive into proposed fee changes. I just have the summary level. Golf passes proposed about 5.41% and greens fees at 7.24%. That is obviously built into the revenue number. The chart on the right shows their operating expenses, pro shop operations, that's your rentals primarily, and then course operations are your membership passes and your daily fees. They do not have any supplementals for 2025, and then highlighting some of their capital is early design for future clubhouse renovations, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think in that feasibility and design could potentially be the covered indoor tennis as part of a larger plan. So very early design, and then in out years would be obviously any hard construction. They are purchasing 2 electric mowers to add to their fleet, which is exciting, and then practice area improvements including mats and netting. Any questions I could try to answer on golf or bring back to the next work session?
Bill?
Mine's not, it's a little broad, really, a comment for the rest of us to think about. There's a number of places in the city of Aspen where we subsidize certain things for Valley residents, golf season passes being one of them. And that's why I'm bringing this up this time. And I'm curious if the rest of you have interest in discussing that concept and whether those things are things that we should be extending to Valley residents at large or limiting to City of Aspen residents. I know it may be different than past practice, but I don't know that we've ever really had that conversation about that concept and how we feel about that. So I wanted to check in with you. Sorry for deviating from your presentation here, Matt, but that triggered my thought process on it.
So in this example, any golf pass that's available to city residents is also available to Valley residents? You were saying in our last meeting, 5 zip codes or something like that?
Yeah, currently there's 7 zip codes that our community become a primary resident. And again, one of the things we presented earlier was that the motto of the Aspen Golf has been affordability and accessibility to our community too. So just for that information.
Thank you.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So Richard's actually emailed us about this, talking about as to why this is like necessary to about giving back tax dollars. But you're talking about like an overall conversation about subsidies, about anything. I'd be interested to list about everything we subsidize and maybe scrutinize, maybe not do anything with it either. But it's definitely interested in looking at it.
I'd like to get some more information categories and then, yeah, perhaps pull it forward and talk about it in a work session or something. But I'm gonna need more information first because I don't know where it applies.
Nor do I. I'm sure I could not name every example of this type of subsidy, but it's not something that we do. And I don't really think there's much way of subsidies for any development example, but so maybe that was a bad example. But there are definitely other places in this Aspen services where we provide subsidies to more than just city residents. And is that appropriate or not? I don't.
Yeah, if you'll allow me to get some more information, bring it back during.
Yeah, I'd be curious in the number of tee times local pass holders versus people that don't hold a local pass.
We have rough information on that. 2/3 of our tee sheet is reserved specifically for our pass holders, and of our pass holders, roughly 90 to 95% of our pass holders are people who have proven that they're primary residents. We have a total of 965 golf passes. So it is very dominantly for our community.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that information.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So Zoom has shut down. We have the Wheel of Death sort of sign. So we're probably going to just shut that down. Or we can, if you would like, I believe we have 2 funds that we can talk about. We are still broadcasting on Grassroots, but we would not have a visual for you.
Yeah, we're going to continue if we can.
Recreation is part of the general fund. This is a fund that came to you in July to present their business plan and discuss council's goal of moving towards 50% cost recovery over the next 3 years. For 2025, total sources, revenues of about 2.8 million and total uses of 5.8 million. Proposed fee changes to work towards that 50% cost recovery goal, average about 8% in 2025. No supplemental costs for 2025. Their capital list within the general fund of recreation is limited to more of equipment, an ice surfacer, pool vacuums, some flooring and interior finishes versus a large facility and mechanical that comes out of the Parks and Open Space Fund.
Is the flooring a replacement of existing flooring?
Question?
Oh, it's a sports floor, it's a court floor for the AIG, for the ice garden. So trying to multi-use it, to use the garden in other ways in the summer when we take that out. So it would be a sport court floor that we put into the ice garden.
Interesting.
I'm interested in more info on that. I don't think you have that floor that I've gotten from parents is that when they've done indoor summer sports in there, they've found it to be so dangerous and not great for the kids. So I don't know if the floor changes that dynamic significantly or not, but.
Yeah, because currently when you take ice out, it's just a concrete slab and just what we work with. And so this would be an actual court floor, much like in a gym or a gymnasium, to be able to utilize for cross-utilization for even our roller skating and then potentially pickleball for things like that.
Cool.
Any other questions on recreation? And the last fund or department being presented tonight is events. I can see the smaller screen has advanced, but the larger ones have not. Special events, total sources of revenue of $30,000, versus total uses of almost 1.3. Special events through council direction continues to focus on creating free and unique community events So obviously, they are putting on free events that do not collect the revenues that maybe they have in the past. In addition, Special Events manages the special event permit process and parks rentals and uses, and then supports Parks Direct Golf, Space and Trails, and Red Brick Arts customer service focus. They do have some small supplemental requests for 2025 that we're kind of touch on our kickoff night, like other documents presented tonight, software and website ADA digital compliance, as well as some events operations and equipment, including radios, as mentioned multiple times tonight.
Yep, Bill.
The number for this revenue set out to me is low. What are we bringing in for an event like the Palm Tree Fest? I'm not picking on anyone, it's just the first large one that comes to mind that probably goes through your department.
So the special events department, we collect fee, which is very minimal. So your revenue that you get from something like the Palm Tree Festival is within the Parks Department, and that is the parks fee within the park structure.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Does it not to you? Can I help? Can I?
I don't know if it does or not, but I'm glad it makes sense to you. That you don't get your expenses. That revenue is interesting, but I also understand that it's a parks asset that is being rented, so.
Most of the expenses associated with special events are done with the parks team. So mowing, cleanup, locating aviation, all of those expenses are parks fund related expenses.
Makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on special events?
Do you have the sledding derby scheduled yet?
Not a date yet.
Not a date
We
yet,
should
okay.
have that by the end of the month.
All right.
Sam, you can.
Planning to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that wraps up our presentations tonight. Next Monday, October 21st, we have APTA presenting as well as talking about Smuggler, Arts and Culture Fund, Wheeler Opera House and Red Brick Arts, Environmental Health, Climate Action, and the REM Fund, as well as the anchor presentation from Water and Electric Utilities. And then finally, I will be presenting the remainder of the housing funds and in Transportation and Stormwater Fund.
And just for clarity for the council and any of those who may be watching, the mayor has called a special meeting at 4 p.m. on the 21st and is anticipating the work session will start at 5 p.m.
What's the special meeting for? I didn't.
We just need an executive session for manager review. Thank you.
Matt, just off the record, can a enterprise fund bond have money for like a capital improvements?
I would defer to Pete on that.
So you can definitely issue debt with an enterprise fund, but again, the trick with enterprise funds is they need to act like a business, so they need to be able to support that debt. The city of Aspen, due to its charter and when it was first adopted, was before Tabor, and our charter has specific language in it that doesn't allow us to, in this case, operate like a business and debt without first going to a vote of the people. That is very unlike a lot of other communities that already adopted language that will allow them to do that. So in those cases, obviously, we need to go to a vote of the people before we could do anything.
Thanks for that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you as always to Grassroots. We have no meeting tomorrow, but we'll be back next Monday, the 21st, with another work session on budget and a regularly scheduled meeting the following night on Tuesday. Thank you.